Good night, good night. Have one done tonight. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Simon J. Spiritual Brown. He give a word on tonight. And it's time we're going to meet the people rebel. They rebel over God. You know, they was right there to the promised land and they reject to go in because of fear. Because the other men went out there and spied the land and came back with a bad report. And that's what they stuck on. You know, and it'll come from Numbers chapter 14, verse 1 to 45. You know, so now the ones who went out and explored the land came to Israel, give Israel a bad report, you know, saying that we seem like grasshopper under them, you know, in our own eyes. But clearest said that we could take them, you know, we could take them. He's telling the Israelites, don't be afraid, we got this. You know, him and Joshua, they said the land is good, that we can take them. You know, but the other 70 men that went out there to spy the land for 40 days, they come back with a bad report. They said, oh, they're too large. You know, they're too large. You know, so now the Israelites are still crying out, crumbling, weeping out loud, you know, against Moses and Aaron. Now the whole assembly said, if only we had died in Egypt or in the wilderness. Now they're still talking about, you know, they should wish they would have died in Egypt or either in the wilderness. You know, but see, excuse me. But see, they're mumbling and grumbling, and God listen. Now you see how they say they wish they can die, you know, in Egypt or either in the wilderness, and God gonna get them just what they want. God gonna get them just what they want. Now, why the Lord is bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the swamp? So they really think God, you know, took them out there. They think God had saved them from slavery, you know, to take them in the wilderness to kill them. You know, He only gonna get them what they desire for, you know, because that's all they keep on saying. I wish we would have stood in Egypt, or you should just let us die in the wilderness. You know, all that what God had did for them. You know, He cared for them, you know, get them food every day. They had enough food so it was coming out their nostrils, get them water, you know, He provide for them. And they still wasn't satisfied, keep on worrying about what they had in Egypt. So they all stated it would be better for us to go back to Egypt, and they said we chose a leader and go back to Egypt. You know, so they're talking about choosing another leader because they don't want Moses even be their leader no more. You know, so the people were caught up in their emotion, you know, of the moment, you know, forgetting what all God had did for them. You know, sometimes people can forget so quickly, especially these Israelites. You know, they keep on forgetting so quickly all that God had done for them. You know, so what if the people had if they had spent much energy moving forward, you know, as they did moving backwards. You know, but they constantly keep moving backwards instead of trying to move forward. You know, so they never had entered the land yet. You know, because, you know, God gonna allow them to wander in 40 years because of their complaint. Because God heard them. You know, He could have left us in Egypt, or He could have just let us die in the wilderness. You know, God heard everything they say. He gonna give them what they want. Now Moses and Aaron had fell face down in front of the Israelite assembly gathered around them. You know, so they fell face down because what they keep on mumbling and crumbling about, you know, Moses know God is fed up. So Moses fell face down. You know, he fell face down. You know, because he knows it's enough. You know, so now Joshua and Caleb, you know, there were among those who had exposed the land, they tore their clothes. You know, and they said to the entire Israelite, you know, assembly, the land we passed through, you know, the land we passed through, the land we exposed, the same as those over there, you know, this land is exceedingly good. They said this land is good. You know, so now the others, you know, who exposed the land, they give a report where the Israelite is crying out. You know, so now they done stirred the Israelite all up. Got them complaining, wish they was dead, you know, all because they come back with this bad report. But Joshua and Caleb, they also explored the land also, along with them. That's somehow how two people, three people can be in the same room, and just like when an incident happened, you'll have three people telling three different stories. Say the land is good, and the Lord is pleased with us. So Joshua and Caleb is telling the Israelites, the Lord is pleased with us. So He will lead us into this land. A land is flowing with milk and honey that God is giving us. Because see, if God say, I'm giving you this land, you don't have to be afraid. Don't be afraid if they're large. And then the other one talking about they look like grasshopper to them. They didn't shook the Israelites up, and they got so scared and afraid. So Joshua is telling them, do not rebel against the Lord. And do not be afraid of the people. So Joshua trying to calm them down. We would to God, we will beat them. Joshua started saying, we gonna beat them. We got this sense. Y'all don't need to be afraid. We got God on our side. We gonna take that land. Because if God said He gonna give us this land, we gonna be able to take that land. So they don't have, so Joshua telling them, we could beat them. So Joshua telling them, they don't have no protection. But we have the law on our side. So you don't have to be afraid. So Joshua said they don't have no protection. But we got the law on our side. So that means if you got God on your side, don't worry about whole army. Don't worry about how large they is. You got one mighty God. There's one person that can take on the whole army. So what you crying for? God to put all your enemies under the Red Sea. Y'all done saw so many powers and miracles, and you scared about what they said about this people is large. So no matter how big someone is, and when you have God on your side, that all you need. So we don't have to be afraid because someone about this tall. You got to remember, God can take on the whole army. God is what? God take on our storms. He take on our battles. But no matter how you talk to the Israelites, you cannot get through to them. So Moses had fell face down because the Israelites rebelled against God. Moses already know this is it. This is it. Y'all reject going into this land. Y'all not gonna go to your land. We can see the land right here. They're this close to the land where you can see this land. And you mean to tell me y'all gonna reject going into your land because someone said y'all look like grasshoppers to those people? And you forget who is on your side? So Moses fell face down, because the Israelites rebelled against God again. And Moses had pleaded to God not to destroy them again. So he used God's own words to reason with him. So God honored Moses' request to spare the lives of the Israelites, but at the same time, specify, specific consequences, for their rebellions. So he ain't forgot. God don't forget. When someone do wrong, He don't forget their punishment. Okay, I'm gonna say it on for this moment. But there are consequences behind them rebelling against Him. So God allowed life lessons. So God about to give them a lesson. He told Moses that He gonna spare them for right now. But God about to teach them a lesson. So God allowed life lessons to help us become all that we may be to Him. So the lesson that God will give them, is what took their journey 3 days will take 40 years because of their rebellions. And just the lesson that God will give them. What their journey was supposed to take 3 days to get to the land. They're standing right there. They can see their land. They can see their land, but they're not going to get to it until 40 years. You know, so God had led the Israelite out of slavery, through the disillusioned desert, and up to the very edge of the promised land. They up on the edge. They could see the land. You know, the edge of the promised land. He had protected them. God had protected them. God had fed them. He fulfilled every promise. But yet, when they're encouraged to take the last step of faith and into the land, you know, they're at the edge of taking their last step to enter the promised land. And they're gonna reject because they have fear, because they figure like they look like grasshoppers, going by what the other 70 leaders had told them. But you had two guys, Joshua and Caleb, had told them, the land is good. We could take them. But they don't want to listen to the two guys. They figure 70 and plus 2, you got 70 people, so they're not going to believe the 2. They're going to believe the 70 men that went out there. So the people refuse. They refuse to enter their land. So after witness so many miracles they had witnessed with God, and they stopped trusting God. We trust God to handle the small issues, but when we had a big issue, we think God can't handle it. Just like the other day, I said God has said, "Is my arm too short?" You know, God can take on an armor because God is war. He could take on war. We okay to let God handle the small stuff, but then when the big stuff comes, we panic. Talking to myself and inner one, we panic. We think God can handle the big old stuff. But we gotta realize He created the whole world. So that means He can handle anything. But the Israelites saw what God can handle. He put all of them under the Red Sea. Perform all kind of miracles and stuff. So they know what God can do. But some kind of way, they quickly forgot. So we trust God to handle the small issues, but we doubt His ability to take care of the big problem. The tough decision. The frightened situation. Tearing the clothes. You remember that? Remember Aaron? They had told Joseph. They had tore their clothes off because when the Israelites had rebelled against God, the tearing their clothes was a customary way of showing deep sorrow. When they realized the Israelites were rebelling against God, they tore their clothes off. And tearing their clothes off means deep sorrow. They were feeling sorry for the Israelites. Mourning or despair. Joshua and Caleb was greatly distressed by the people refused to enter the land. You went through all that trouble. That's just like me. I'm going through all that trouble. I ain't about to go backwards. I'm trying to go forward. But they just kept on memorizing on Egypt. Kept on looking back to the familiar, where they was comfortable at. Instead of using all their energy trying to move forward. So two wise men, Joshua and Caleb, were encouraged. They were trying to encourage the people to act on God's promise, and move ahead into the land. You went through so much trouble to get away from slavery. You get right there where you can see the land and you're going to stop. You're going to stop. You don't want to enter that land that you done worked so hard for, that you done sit and being enslaved for 400 years. If I was enslaved for 400 years and God give me out, I'll be breaking my neck to that promised land. So they encouraged the people, but God promised move ahead into the land, but the people reject. The Israelites reject. They reject the advice and even talk to killing themselves. So they were quickly to reject going into the land, afraid of how large the people was. So then the whole assembly, talk about stoning them. So the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of the meeting. So God mad now. God giving them this promised land. God been guiding and leading them the whole time. but providing for them, protecting them, and they get right there, on an age where they can see the land, and they're rejecting the land. They refuse to enter into the promised land that God is giving them. So the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of the meeting. To all the Israelites. The Lord the Lord said to Moses, how long, will this people keep on treating me this way? Because every time you look around, I, we had meat in Egypt. It was so good. We need to go back in Egypt. Why you took us up in here in this wilderness? They complained the whole time when they're the one cried out to God, to save them and pull them out of slavery. So to Moses, how long will these people, treat me just with contempt? The Lord said, how long they will refuse to believe in me. So in spite of all the signs, I have performed among them. So God said, all the signs that I perform in front of them. And they still don't believe. They still don't believe. You got all them people in that land and you still forgot how God had used his power, and protect them, fed them, did everything for them. And what? They forgot? So since they refused God, he will strike them down with a flash and destroy them. But I will make you into a nation greater, stronger than that. So he said he go still make Moses, a strong, still make the Israelite a strong nation. They gonna be gone. But the next generation gonna go across the land. So now Moses trying to tell God, if you destroy all the Israelites today, because see, God was thinking about destroying all of them. Moses plead for them again. You know, so Moses said, if you try, God, if you try to destroy all the Israelites to death, leaving not alive, the nation who have heard this report about you will say, they all will say that the Lord could not be able to bring them into their promised land. So this Moses telling them, if you kill all the Israelites, everybody gonna say that you couldn't help them to get into that land. You know, you was not able to bring these people into the land that you promised. And he slaughtered them into the wilderness. So Moses telling him this is what people gonna be saying. People gonna be saying you slaughtered all them in the wilderness because you couldn't take them to the promised land. Which we know that's not true. So God had to think a second. He had to think again. So the Lord's strength be displayed on our God that is slow to anger, abiding in love, and forgiving sin and rebellions. But he don't forget about punish anyone. So we have a great God. He provide, for the Israelites, and he perceived miracles, right in front of their face. So now he are forgiven, but he does not leave a guilty unpunished. He are a loving God and he are a forgiving God, but he do not leave a guilty person unpunished. He punished the children for the sin of the parents, to the third and fourth generation. So the third and the fourth generation is going to be the ones who going to go to the promised land. Because he took another look in what Moses had told him. If you kill all of them, everybody going to think you weren't able to bring them to that promised land. So the third and the fourth generation will go to the promised land. So the generation that's here now is the second generation. Because the first generation was Joseph and his brothers, they all was gone. So what God is dealing with now is the second generation. So God's saying the third and the fourth generation will go to the promised land. Saying according with your great love, forgive, the sin of these people just as you have ordained them from the time, they left Egypt until now. This was Moses' time. Moses said, you love this people. You made it over their ancestors. So God, Moses is telling God, since they had left Egypt, you've been loving and protecting them. So the Lord replied, God had forgiven. God said, I've forgiven them, as you asked. Nevertheless, as surely as I live, and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth. Now he can fill the whole earth. And they think he can fight those people that's in that land. He created the whole world. He said his glory will be over the whole earth. And now one of those who saw my glory, one of them that saw my glory, in a sign, I perform in Egypt in the wilderness. But who disobeyed me and test me 10 times? Every time you look around, God forgive them every time. And they kept on rebelling. God forgive them. But this time is different. Not one of them whatever see the land that I'm giving them. No one of them will ever see the land I promised and owe to their ancestors. No one who had treated me with contempt will ever see that land. But God heard everything they were saying. They're saying they wish they were back there by Egypt. They wish they could have been dead in the wilderness, and God gonna give them their wish. He said, not one of them gonna see that land. Who treated me with contempt. So now Clearance had a different spirit and followed me the wholehearted, that I will bring him into the land that he went to, and his descendants would inherit it too. So now he's saying none of them would not see that land he was giving them. He said only Joshua and Clearance gonna be the only one. They had the spirits and follow. They had the spirit and follow him the wholehearted. So the Lord said to Moses. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, how long? What is wicked community, grumble against me? God said, I heard all their complaint and all their grumbling into Israel. He said, I heard everything they said. The Lord said, as surely as I live, I will do to you the very thing I heard you say. And that's what I said. God heard everything they said. So God said, I'm going to do to you everything you say that you want to be done. You want to go back to Egypt. You want to die in that wilderness. You're going to do just that. Because God going to do to them whatever he heard them say. So the Lord said, surely as I live, I will do to you the very thing that I heard you say. And this wilderness, your body, will fall, every one of you, 20 years old or more, who could, in the sense of who had grumbled against me, no one of you will enter the land that I swore with a lip, to hand to make your home except Clearance and Joshua. Now God said, all the one that's over 20 years old will not enter that promised land. Now anyone that's under 20 years old, that generation is the third generation, and their generation gonna be the fourth generation. So they will be the only one that will enter that land. They will enter that land. All the one that's over 20 years old, they know better. They're the one that's not going to enter the land. And also, God said their body will be in the wilderness. Just remember this saying, just let us die in the wilderness. That's what God going to give them. God said, I'm going to give you the same thing that you asked for. So I swore with the uplift hand to make your home except Joshua and Clearance. Now your children that you say will be taken as plunder, I will bring them into enjoy the land that you have rejected. Now God's saying, the land that you rejected, your generation will enter into that land. But as for you, your bodies will fall in this wilderness. Your generation will enter that land, but your body will fall in that wilderness. So now God will give them what they want. And remember, they said God will kill us in the wilderness, and God gonna give them just that. So now this will happen to them. God said your body will be in the wilderness, and any child under 20 years old will enter the land. Anybody that's past 20 years old will not enter the land. But their children, now remember, now God said they will be unpunished, but their body's gonna be in the wilderness. So their generation gonna have to suffer the pain. So just like they say, a lot of time when you're in your ancestors do something, it always reflect on the next generation. So the next generation gonna get the punishment. So but the children will pay the price of this or their ancestors of their parents' sin. They will be shepherds here for 40 years, suffering for the unfaithfulness until the last of the bodies lie in the wilderness. So God gonna kill them one by one. One by one. And the lesson is, what was supposed to take 3 days, gonna take 40 years. And he gonna have their bodies in their wilderness one by one. So for 40 years, 1 year for each of the 40 days, you expose the land and you will suffer for the sin, and know what it is to have me against you. Now God said, y'all done rebelled against me. So now you're going to see how it feels to have the mighty God, against you. We never want God to be against us, but the Israelite took it to that level. Took it right there. And they're going to reject going to the land. All the hard work God did, protect them, fed them and everything, and they're going to get right there and reject the land. God said, now you about to feel. But you about to see how it feels to have me against you. Because God gonna allow them to suffer a little while. See, he killing them one by one. God, y'all allow God to be against y'all because you kept on rebelling against him. You about to see and feel, how it is to have God against you. You know how God fight their enemies and all that. Now you about to have God against you. So God about to have them suffer. Suffer for 40 years, one by one. Body's gonna be in their wilderness. And in the meantime, every last one of them gonna suffer. Before God take them out. For their sin and know what it is to have God against them. I, the Lord, have spoken. Now God has spoke all that to them. And then God said, I am the Lord, and I have spoken. So you have come against me. So now you got to see how it feels to have the mighty God against you. So and I will surely do these things to the whole wicked community, which had banded together against me. So God said, y'all all came against me. But you about to see, you about to have me against you. And you about to feel how it is to have a mighty God against you. So they will meet their end in the wilderness. They will meet the end in the wilderness. Their bodies, their body will be laying all in different parts of the wilderness. That's what they said. They kept on saying they wish they were going to be. That's why when I'm in my stone, and all kind of stuff is still going on. I don't never wish that I'd be dead. I don't never wish to go backwards, because you got to watch the words that come out of your mouth. That's why even in my madness, I still try to watch the words that come out of my mouth. God doing to them whatever they have said, and he going to give them whatever they said. So you got to watch the words that come out of your mouth. When you're mad, when you're confused, you got to watch the words. When you put that on your life, a lot of time it's going to come on you. So you have to watch the words. That's why I'll never have the words come out of my mouth. Never. You know, I never don't want to go backwards. I never don't put no debt on my life or let the words come out of my mouth. You got to be careful of the words that come out of your mouth. God heard everything they said. He said, I'm about to do to you the same thing that you said you want done. You know, so they will meet to end in the wilderness, and here they would die. You know, the men that Moses had sent out, you know, God about to deal with them too. You know, because they're the one that stirred all this up. They're the one that got the Israelites the one into their promised land. You know, so all the men that Moses had sent out, you know, to explore the land, you know, they give the Israelites a bad report. You know, cause them to be all stirred up and crying out and afraid. You know, don't want to enter their land. You know, the men that Moses has sent out, that give the Israelite a bad report, cause of them, you know, had the Israelite to come against God. You know, so God struck down those men, and they died in a place before the Lord. You know, because God feel like there is the problem. You know, they have the Israelite crying out. You know, crying out while they're rejecting to go into their promised land. You know, so only to survive. Because Joshua and Caleb had went with them to the Florida land, but they came back with a good report. They came back with a bad report. So Joshua and Caleb was the only two had survived, and God had struck down on the some of the men that went out and came back with a bad report. Now, 40 days and 40 years. The Israelite is sentenced of wandering for 40 years in the desert. It's not a random chosen by God, but each year of their existence corresponds to a day that they explores the land. So God gonna kill them one by one. They're gonna suffer a little bit before they go. Because God gonna allow them to wander around. And the third generation is the one they're gonna go to the promised land, but God gonna allow them to suffer too. They got to pay the price of their parents. So 40 years lesson is an experience, not only in life of the people, but also in their death. For their act of rebellions. All those 20 years. All those that's 20 years older. Those who will have been older enough. See, God said, anyone that's 20 years older, they're old enough to know better. You're old enough to know right from wrong. So God said, 20 years and older, those who will have been older enough to be able to conquer the land will die in the desert. For 40 years, the Israelites will not only live in wandering, but in the desert. They will also watch as one by one they'll die by their sin. A young folks of Israelite will eventually reach the gateway to the promised land, and they will trust God for the power to conquer it. See, the third generation, they don't want to trust God. They don't want what happened to them. It was their ancestors that happened to them. So now Moses reported this to the Israelites, and they mourn villains. And they ain't going to do no good because they think God playing. You about to see what they about to do. They think God is playing. So now Moses told them what God said. But still, the next morning, see, they think God playing. Moses told them, you're going to die. Y'all about to wander around, for 40 years because y'all rebellious. They don't do no good because, see, the next day, they set out to go to highest part on the hill, and now they're ready to take their land. Now the next day, they're ready to take their land. When before that, they refused to go in their land. And it's too late. God had made his mind up. It's too late. So they want to go on the top of the hill. See, you go on top of the hill, they can see the land. That's why I said they was right there by the land, and they refused to go through. But went to sleep. And woke up the next day. Oh, they're ready to march it and get their land. So, but Moses has said, no, you reject God, so he will not go with you. You will not win. See, without God, you cannot win. So Moses saying, you reject God, you reject going into that land, and mean you reject God, and so God not going with you, and when God not going with you, you will not win. Because they got to beat those people to come out of that land, and they wouldn't. Without God, they cannot win. So you will be defeated by your enemy, and they win. They win anyway. They figure God is playing. Because God had beat the enemy so many times, but this time God not playing. They win anyway. And the Ammonites and the Canaanites came down to attack them, and beat them down. Beat them down. And God did not step in and help them at all. God did not step in. So we never want God to be our enemy. We don't want God to be our enemy. I don't know what was wrong with the Israelites. Why would you get right there? Right there where you can see your land and you refuse to enter your land. Why are you going to be afraid when you got God right there by your side?